What if everything you've been told about money is wrong? What if working hard, buying a home, and saving for retirement is actually keeping you trapped, not making you free? Meet Kristy Shen, a girl who grew up in extreme poverty in rural China and retired as a millionaire in her early 30s. How did she do it? By seeing money not as paper, but as freedom units. This is Quit Like a Millionaire, and it might just rewire how you see your job, your bank account, and your life. Kristy didn't start rich, she started hungry. Literally, born in a Chinese village where food was rationed, she learned early that every cent meant survival, that scarcity taught her something powerful. Money wasn't about luxury. It was about control. While most people chase promotions, she chased the math of freedom. And this is where her journey begins, with blood, sweat, and a brutal truth. Every dollar you earn is paid with your life energy, your blood money. Chapter 1: Blood Money. Imagine growing up so poor that you boil water to trick your stomach into thinking it's full. That was Kristy Shen's childhood. Born in China under the shadow of poverty, her first memory of money wasn't excitement, it was fear. Every yuan meant survival, every mistake could mean hunger. And yet, this same girl who once counted coins to buy rice retired at 31 as a millionaire. So how does a child of poverty transform into someone who quits the rat race forever? This chapter shows us how money isn't just a number, it's emotional DNA, and how your relationship with it can either chain you to fear or set you financially free. Kristy calls it blood money because to her family, every cent was soaked in sacrifice, hours of back-breaking labor, lost sleep, missed meals. It wasn't about greed. It was about survival, and that's where most people go wrong with money. We chase it as a symbol of success, not as a tool for security. Chapter 2: Peach Syrup, Cardboard Boxes, and a Can of Coke. What if your entire idea of being rich was built on a lie? Kristy Shen discovered this the day she tasted her very first can of Coca-Cola. To most kids, it was just a drink. But for Kristy, it was a symbol of what she didn't have, of what she thought rich people must enjoy every single day. This tiny moment sparked a lifelong obsession to never feel poor again. But what she didn't know was that chasing that Coke, that sweet illusion of comfort, would almost trap her in the same financial prison she was running from. As her family's situation improved and they moved to Canada, Kristy was introduced to Western consumer culture, a place where people had too much instead of too little. She learned that in North America, people measure success not by how much freedom they have, but by how many things they can buy. So she started chasing what everyone else was chasing: new clothes, gadgets, experiences, believing this was what making it meant. But soon she realized something shocking. The middle class wasn't rich. They were trapped working 9 to 5 seconds, buried under credit card debt, living paycheck to paycheck just to maintain appearances. Kristy saw that people weren't spending to live, they were living to spend. And that's when she made a decision. If everyone around her was drowning in comfort debt, she would choose discomfort just for a while to buy something far more valuable: freedom. But how do you do that in a world that glorifies spending? The next chapter reveals the powerful mindset shift that turns ordinary salaries into extraordinary wealth. Chapter 3: How much is enough? Have you ever noticed how no matter how much money you make, it never feels like enough? That's because enough is not a number, it's a mindset. In this chapter, Kristy reveals the dangerous trap of lifestyle inflation and how even high earners can die broke if they don't redefine what enough means for them. When Kristy started working as a software engineer, she was finally earning a solid income. But instead of spending it all, she did something unusual: she tracked every single dollar. She realized that most people don't get rich because they never set boundaries on spending. They let their desires expand with their income, always chasing more: a bigger apartment, a nicer car, a fancier vacation. Kristy flipped the script. Instead of asking, "How can I afford this?" she asked, "Do I even need this?" By defining what was truly enough for her food, shelter, travel, and peace of mind, she freed herself from society's endless treadmill of more. This is when she learned a key truth. Wealth isn't built by earning more, it's built by wanting less. But Kristy didn't stop there. She took it one step further. She began to engineer her lifestyle around her freedom number. And soon she discovered something the world doesn't want you to know, that there is a mathematical formula to becoming financially independent faster than anyone thinks. That is where Chapter 4 begins, with the rule that changed everything, the 4% rule. Chapter 4, the 4% rule, the math of freedom. What if I told you that you could calculate the exact moment you'll be free forever down to the year? Sounds impossible, right? But Kristy Shen found the formula. It's not a motivational quote. It's not a get-rich-quick trick. It's math cold, simple, liberating math. The rule is simple. If you can live off 4% of your investments every year, you never have to work again. In other words, once your savings and investments equal 25 times your annual expenses, you're financially independent. Kristy realized that financial freedom wasn't about how much she earned, it was about how little she needed to spend to maintain her lifestyle. By cutting expenses, investing wisely, and letting compound interest do the heavy lifting, she could shorten her working years by decades. This changed everything: her goals, her spending, her sense of purpose. She no longer needed millions in her bank. She just needed enough to make her money work harder than she did. But knowing the math is one thing. Having the courage to trust it is another. In the next chapter, Kristy faces the ultimate fear: quitting her job and walking away from the comfort of a paycheck forever. Would the formula hold up? Or would the real world prove too unpredictable? That's where the true test of her millionaire mindset begins. Chapter 5: The Fear and the Freedom. Quitting the job. Imagine standing in your office for the last time, your resignation letter printed, your heart pounding, your hands trembling. Everyone around you thinks you're crazy. You're in your 30s, making six figures, and about to throw it all away. That was Kristy Shen on her final day at work. But this wasn't recklessness. It was rebellion against the illusion that a paycheck equals safety. She wasn't running away from work. She was running toward freedom. When Kristy hit her financial independence number, she had the math on her side but fear in her heart. What if the stock market crashed? What if she outlived her savings? What if everyone was right that quitting this early was stupid? She realized that fear is the mind's way of protecting the familiar. But she also knew freedom and fear always come as a package deal. So instead of ignoring her fear, she studied it. She ran simulations, stress-tested her investments, diversified her portfolio, and planned for the worst-case scenario. By preparing logically, she made fear powerless. That's when she finally handed in her resignation letter, not as an escape, but as a victory lap. But quitting wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a whole new identity crisis. When your entire life has been defined by work, who are you without it? The next chapter dives into the emotional chaos that comes after financial freedom. When you realize money can't fill the void of purpose. Chapter 6: The Identity Crisis. When freedom feels empty, you dream of quitting your job. But what happens when you actually do? And wake up the next day with nothing to do? For Kristy, it was like winning the lottery and then losing her sense of self overnight. No alarms, no deadlines, no boss, and surprisingly, no happiness. She realized that most people chase financial freedom because they think money will bring fulfillment. But in reality, money only removes pain, it doesn't create purpose. Kristy spent months traveling, spending time with her husband, writing. Yet something felt missing. Then it hit her: she had spent her entire life chasing numbers, not meaning. True wealth, she discovered, comes when you design your time around growth, connection, and impact. She began teaching others about financial independence, sharing her story, and helping people rethink their relationship with money. The moment she turned her freedom into service, her happiness returned. But as her influence grew, so did criticism. People started asking, isn't this just luck? What if it stops working? In the next chapter, Kristy faces the skeptics and breaks down why financial independence isn't luck, but a system anyone can follow, if they dare. Chapter 7, the system behind financial freedom. Everyone loves to call millionaires lucky, but luck didn't get Kristy out of poverty, strategy did. This chapter reveals the exact system she used to go from a broke immigrant to financially independent before 35. Kristy's system wasn't built on magic, it was built on automation, consistency, and compounding. She maxed out her retirement accounts, invested in low-cost index funds, and used dollar-cost averaging to ride out market ups and downs. She ignored hot stock tips, flashy trends, and quick wins, focusing instead on what always works: time in the market, not timing the market, but the real secret. She automated everything: her bills, her savings, her investments. This removed emotion from money and turned wealth building into a habit, not a chore. Her wealth grew silently in the background while she focused on living her life. But then came a curveball. The stock market dipped, her portfolio shrank, and fear returned. Could her system survive real-world chaos? The next chapter uncovers how she handled market crashes and what it really means to stay rich, even when everyone else panics. Chapter 8, the market crash. Staying calm when others lose everything. What would you do if your life savings suddenly dropped by 30%? Most people panic, sell, and lose even more. Kristy. She smiled because she had seen it before and she had a plan. When the market crashed, Kristy didn't panic. She remembered a simple truth: volatility is the price you pay for wealth. She had built her plan knowing downturns were inevitable. Her portfolio was diversified across stocks, bonds, and international markets. And because she had no debt, no panic-induced bills, she didn't need to sell. Instead, she rebalanced, buying more stocks when prices were low. The same fear that made others poor made her richer. This is how real millionaires think, not as gamblers, but as strategists who profit from patience. But the next challenge wasn't financial, it was social. Because when you stop working and everyone else is grinding 9 to 5, people start treating you differently. Chapter 9 exposes the hidden loneliness of early retirement and how Kristy built a new kind of community beyond money. Chapter 9, the loneliness of freedom. They tell you financial freedom is the dream, but what they don't tell you is freedom can get lonely. While your friends are busy climbing the corporate ladder, you're out traveling the world. Alone, no meetings, no co-workers, no shared Monday morning misery. At first, it feels liberating, then it feels empty. Kristy realized something profound: work gives people a built-in community. When you quit, you have to rebuild that from scratch. So she began seeking connection beyond careers and titles. She joined the FIRE Financial Independence Retire Early community, met other freedom seekers, and built friendships based on values, not status. She learned that true wealth isn't just financial, it's social and emotional capital. It's having people who understand your journey, your mindset, and your mission. The happiest millionaires are not riches, they are the ones surrounded by others who live with intention. But one question still haunted her: what happens when you change, but the world around you doesn't? Chapter 10 takes this story deeper into how financial independence doesn't just change your bank account, it changes who you are. Chapter 10, the transformation, how money changes who you are. Imagine you finally make it. You have the money, the time, the freedom, yet somehow you feel disconnected. People treat you differently. Some admire you, others envy you. You no longer belong to the same world you came from, but you also do not belong to the one you've entered. Kristy Shen faced this identity split, the painful transformation that comes when you stop being who the world told you to be. Money doesn't just buy freedom. It rewires your beliefs. Kristy realized that financial independence forced her to confront every assumption she ever had about self-worth, purpose, and belonging. She was raised to equate struggle with value. If you weren't working hard, you didn't deserve success. But when she stopped trading time for money, that old belief shattered. She learned that her worth wasn't tied to productivity, it was tied to creativity, to contribution, to peace. That was the real transformation, detaching identity from income. But not everyone could handle her transformation. Friends drifted, relatives judged. So, how do you protect your peace when your success triggers others? Chapter 11 reveals the secret to handling social friction without losing your joy. Chapter 11, the pushback. When success makes people uncomfortable, have you ever noticed how people cheer you on until you actually win? Kristy found that the moment she quit her job to live her dream, the applause turned into side eyes. Must be nice to not work, they'd say. Behind every compliment was an edge of resentment. Freedom exposed how trapped others felt, and it made them uncomfortable. She learned that people's reactions to your success aren't really about you, they rave about them. When someone sees you living free, they're forced to confront their own choices. Kristy handled this by staying humble and focusing on helping others. Instead of defending herself, she shared her story transparently, the mistakes, the fears, the sacrifices. This turned judgment into curiosity and jealousy into inspiration. The more honest she was, the more people began to listen. True leadership, she discovered, is not flaunting your success, it's humanizing it. But as Kristy shared her journey publicly, a new challenge appeared: the fear of losing privacy and control. In Chapter 12, she reveals how she built balance between sharing her message and protecting her mental freedom. Chapter 12, the balance, privacy, purpose, and public life. Imagine being free enough to travel anywhere, but feeling watched everywhere. That's the paradox Kristy faced when her story went viral. She had built wealth to gain freedom, yet fame began stealing it back. She realized that freedom has layers: financial, emotional, and digital. While money freed her from corporate control, exposure created new pressure. So she built boundaries. She shared lessons, not lifestyles. She focused on values, not vanity. By being intentional about what she revealed, she kept her peace intact. This taught her that true freedom isn't just having options, it's knowing which ones not to take. But then came a bigger revelation. What if the whole point of wealth isn't to escape the world, but to engage with it differently? Chapter 13 dives into how Kristy turned her financial freedom into a mission to change how people think about work, wealth, and life itself. Chapter 13, the mission, redefining the meaning of work. What if retirement isn't the end of working, but the beginning of meaningful work? Kristy's version of early retirement wasn't sipping cocktails forever. It was discovering what she truly wanted to contribute once money no longer dictated her choices. She began writing, mentoring, and creating content around financial independence. She found fulfillment in helping others reclaim their lives. She discovered a new truth: when money is no longer the goal, impact becomes the game. Kristy redefined work as something you do not because you have to, but because you want to. And paradoxically, that mindset made her even more successful. Her purpose became her paycheck. But purpose is not static. What happens when even your dream life starts feeling predictable? In Chapter 14, Kristy explores the next mountain every millionaire must face: growth after freedom. Chapter 15, Inner Critic. The final mountain. You can silence the alarm clock. You can silence the boss. But you cannot silence the voice in your head, the one that whispers, "You're not doing enough." Even after quitting her job, even after becoming a millionaire, Kristy Shen still battled that voice. Freedom had freed her body, but not her mind. The inner critic, she discovered, doesn't disappear with wealth. It simply changes shape. Instead of fearing poverty, it fears irrelevance. Instead of asking, "What if I fail?" it asks, "What if I stop mattering?" Kristy learned to confront it not with logic but with compassion. She began journaling, meditating, and practicing gratitude not for money but for presence. That's when she realized true wealth isn't external. It's the quiet mind that no longer measures worth in numbers. But conquering the inner critic wasn't the end, it was the doorway to something deeper, emotional freedom. In the next chapter, Kristy explores the art of enjoying wealth without guilt or fear. Chapter 16. The Art of Enjoyment, Spending Without Guilt. Most people fear running out of money, but for Kristy, the real fear was using it. She had spent years saving every penny, training her brain to associate spending with danger. So when she finally had enough, she couldn't enjoy it. This is the paradox of frugality. It saves you, but it can also trap you. Kristy realized that money is a tool, not a trophy. The purpose of financial independence isn't to hoard wealth, but to live richly on your own terms. She started spending consciously on experiences, learning, travel, and people who expanded her world. She called it Joy ROI, the return on investment of happiness. Each purchase was filtered through one question: will this make my life more meaningful? That's how she turned spending from guilt into gratitude. But one thing still haunted her: the people still trapped in the system she escaped. In the next chapter, Kristy begins helping others break their own financial mountains. Chapter 17, The Ripple Effect. Teaching freedom: when you light a candle, it doesn't lose its flame, it spreads it. Kristy realized that her journey wasn't just personal. It was a blueprint that could free millions. So she began teaching others, showing that financial independence wasn't just for the privileged, but for anyone willing to play the long game. Through her blog, books, and talks, Kristy simplified finance, stripping away jargon, fear, and elitism. She helped people understand that money is emotional before it's mathematical. You don't need to earn six figures. You need to manage what you have like it matters. She made freedom relatable, proving that financial independence isn't a dream, it's a discipline. This created a movement, ordinary people transforming their lives through awareness, automation, and patience. But with influence comes pressure. How do you stay authentic when the world starts labeling you as a guru? Chapter 18 dives into how Kristy stayed grounded and why humility became her greatest asset. Chapter 18, The Grounding. Staying real amid success. Success can be a mirror. It reflects who you are, but it can also distort it. As her story spread, Kristy faced a new kind of danger: ego. When the world celebrates you, it's easy to start believing the hype, but she refused to lose herself in applause. Kristy stayed anchored to her values by remembering where she came from: the child who counted coins, the girl who boiled water to silence hunger. She used her platform to uplift others, not elevate herself. Each time she shared her wins, she also shared her fears, reminding everyone that she's still learning. Humility, she discovered, is not weakness, it's freedom from performance. It keeps you open, grounded, and connected to your purpose. But as she reflected on her full journey from poverty to peace, one truth stood above all. And that's what the final chapter reveals: the real definition of being rich. Chapter 19, The Real Meaning of Being Rich. What if being rich has nothing to do with money? What if the richest people are not those with the biggest bank accounts, but those with the calmest hearts? After everything Kristy had earned, lost, and learned, she realized her definition of rich had evolved forever. To her, being rich meant waking up without dread. It meant time to think, space to breathe, and the power to choose. It meant generosity not from overflow, but from abundance of spirit. It meant knowing that wealth isn't freedom from something, it's freedom for something. Her journey began with fear, but ended in peace. The mountain wasn't money. The mountain was her mindset. And with that realization came the ultimate truth. You do not need to be a millionaire to quit like one. You only need the courage to redefine what enough really means. Her story closes not with numbers, but with purpose, a reminder that the richest life is the one lived intentionally. Every person watching this has their own mountain: fear, debt, doubt, or self-sabotage. But as Kristy Shen shows, the climb to wealth isn't about numbers, it's about courage. It's about choosing awareness over autopilot, freedom over fear, and meaning over money. Ask yourself, what would your life look like if you stopped chasing more and started designing enough? If this journey inspired you, subscribe for more cinematic book summaries that change the way you think about success, freedom, and the human spirit. And remember, you do not need to be rich to live richly.